And now I'm joined in the studio by Gerald Olivier, who's here for Live on Paris Live PM. And we're going to be talking about Donald Trump at Davos.
Yes,
welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Well, 4 days of the World Economic Forum got going today in Davos, Switzerland. It's been going since the 1970s. An annual gathering of world and business leaders at their resort in the Swiss Alps. Now, a lot to do in that 4-day period because there are some 60, 70 heads of state going to be attending. More than 2,000 delegates. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi acknowledged today that globalization is less attractive than it may have been in the past, but he warned that new trade walls are not the answer. Do you think he was directing that comment at Donald Trump, who's due to speak on Friday at Davos?
Yeah, I think so. It's pretty obvious. There are several things to be said. Number one, American presidents don't usually attend Davos while in office. Clinton does, but that's because he's the head of his own foundation, and he left the White House.
That was some time ago.
Some time ago, exactly. And Obama never went. George W. Bush never did either. Before that, Davos was not what it's become, so it was not such a great gathering. And a U.S. president didn't make the effort to go there. Trump did. And the surprising thing is
is going to.
Is going, yeah, it does, sorry. And he'll be there Thursday and he'll be speaking Friday. So the surprising thing is that Trump is supposed to be an anti-globalism, all right? And Davos is the #1 gathering of globalist capitalism, the mecca for those people. So what is Trump actually doing there? I think he's doing two things. Number one, he's reminding the world that the U.S. is still the #1 economic power. Last year, the Chinese president Xi Jinping was the star of Davos. Trump wants to be the star this year. Last year, he just got into the White House. It was too soon, couldn't be there. This time he wants to be. That's the first thing he wants to do. Second, he wants to remind people that his philosophy or his approach to power, America first, doesn't mean building barriers. It simply means fair trade instead of unfair or wild trade. And that's the kind of message I think he's going to be conveying in his speech.
Was it a coincidence that his administration just announced a hike in import duties on solar panels? A lot of those are made in China. And that's not a coincidence?
No, I don't think so. And China is the big guy. China is the big player. Once again, Trump is for fair trade. And on the one hand, I don't think he's so much into raising barriers for Chinese products. I think he'd much rather also see China lower their own barriers. Amazon is just going to open a huge platform in France. Amazon couldn't do that in China. If you're a foreign company, you cannot invest in China unless you have a Chinese partner and they own 51% of the business. Why is that so? And so this is the kind of reality that the world has to face, and that's the kind of words that Trump is going to remind people of.
But the import duties have also been hiked on products like washing machines. Well, that could affect European importers as well, the Germans, the Italians.
Yeah, China is the big player, but it's not the only player. Trump already withdrew from the TPP. We know that talks for a free trade area with Europe pretty much suspended and the project has been abandoned. On many issues, Trump feels, rightly or wrongly, and I'm not going to go into those details, he feels that the U.S. were always at the wrong end of those so-called free trade deals. So he's trying to put things back into a more favorable light for the U.S. Time will tell whether he is right or wrong. So far, things have been working out pretty well for him. Whether he's responsible for it or not, the economy in the U.S. is booming. Unemployment is at a 70-year low. The stock market is booming. And as long as those indicators keep being in the green as they are, Trump will be doing well. And at least, whether people like him or not, they'll be able to see that where maybe his policies actually work. If things were to turn the other way, that would be radically different.
At Davos itself, is this kind of position that you're describing going to make particular immediate waves, either within the community, the Davos community, and some of those speakers who are going to be there, or at home in either a positive or negative way?
Trump loves a fight. I mean, in case we haven't noticed yet, he loves the fight. He doesn't mind a hostile crowd. He doesn't mind to speak his mind in front of people who disagree. And he doesn't mind to tell people, whether global leaders, what he actually thinks of them. I mean, I think his speech is going to be very reminiscent of the speech he gave at the UN back in September. It won't be on foreign policy. It's more going to be on international trade, but it's going to remind people that, you know, there are three pillars to world prosperity: national sovereignty, security. Both of these can lead to prosperity. So it's going to remind people that borders exist and that it's okay for people to walk across those borders and for products to be traded across those borders, as long as it's done in an orderly way and in a way that doesn't disadvantage one country versus another.
There are apparently protests, anti-Trump protests, planned at Davos, which will surely be more or less contained. Yeah. Do you think it's going to affect him in any way, or is this play into his fight?
No, it's going to please him. He likes that. He doesn't mind. The funny thing is that usually you have protesters at Davos. They are anti-Davos. This year, Trump is there, so there's going to be protesters. They're going to be anti-Trump. There's always a reason to protest. He doesn't mind that. Like I said, he likes the spotlight and he likes a good fight, and he likes to make the news, and he drives the news. And he's going to be driving the news this year at Davos. In an ironic way, he's not going to be the only world leader there. Modi from India is there. Macron from France is going to be there. Merkel should be there. Theresa May is going to be there. If I were these world leaders, I'd be slightly worried, because I'm afraid he's going to steal the spotlight from them too.
That may well be. He almost cancelled his trip, though.
Because of the government shutdown.
It was only because of the government shutdown.
Well, that might have been an excuse, but I think he wants to come. I think he has a message to deliver. Once again, you know, sovereignty, security lead to prosperity. And I think he's going to enjoy the spotlight and the kind of news. He's a disruptor too. And he likes to surprise people by his statement. So he is not afraid at all of going in that crowd, regardless of what they think of him, so that he gets a chance to tell them what he thinks of them.
But do you think he's actually going to make any friends at Davos this year?
Why not? I mean, he's open to talk. The funny thing with Trump is that he's a lot tougher when he is talking to people in general. He's a lot softer one-on-one. Some people, Emmanuel Macron in France, Xi Jinping in China, they know how to handle him. You flatter him, you unroll the red carpet for him, you give him the royal treatment, and all of a sudden he mellows out. So there is going to go there with an extended hand, and if people are willing to take that hand and go the Trump way, he'll make friends with them, no problem.
And he could be celebrated after the IMF has revised upwards its global growth figures, apparently on the back of US policy.
If it turns out that such is the case, yes, he might be. But that's going to come very reluctantly.
It's about tax cuts in the US.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see the result of those. And there may be a temporary extra boost to the economy, but it's going to take a time before any international economy agrees that having a talk that might have anything to do with free trade might still be good for the international economy. I don't think they're going to be willing to go that far. But at least if the US economy is doing better and the IMF admits that and says that it's good for the world economy, that will be noted undeniably.
You've written about progress made in the US by Trump since he came in spite of all the criticism that he comes in for on lots of different levels, different subjects, not least of all things like migration. Does this play into Davos? Does this play into improving the US economy, whether it's because of international trade or domestic economics?
Not necessarily, but the way I see it, and the reason I wrote that post on my blog, has to do with the fact that I believe Trump is getting a very unfair treatment from the media. He's never been accepted by the media as a legitimate president because of the circumstances around his election, because of his personality, because he has a fight with the media. And so in the US, whenever you talk about Trump, you talk in a very hostile way. You talk about what to me is not important. You have to distinguish Trump and the Trump administration from the Trump tweets. The tweets are just a reflection of the mood of Trump when he writes the tweets. They're like Jacques Chirac's, political promises. Only those who believe them are engaged by those. So the tweets are not important to policy. What's really important is what's happening behind closed doors, during international meetings. And so far, the result of Trump being president of the U.S. has not been so bad, neither for American people, not on an international level. And that's all I was trying to say in that post.
Gerald Olivier, thank you very much for speaking to us today here on Live on RFI.
Thank you for having me.